Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the event today. My name is Traven Keith. I'm the Managing Director of Agavon. It's a company that helps other companies figure out if they need blockchain technology or other distributed ledger technologies or not, and helping them along the way either way. I'm also part of numerous other projects like the Ardor and NXT group, Seikos, Smart Cash, Byteball, and too many others to mention. I won't bore you with that. But today we're going to talk about blockchain adoption, and it's a topic that's very close to what my company is supposed to help out with doing. And I'm very happy to introduce to you Daniel Nice, Florian Fiedler, sorry, and Dr. Ranjesh Tiwari. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us today, and I'll let you all each introduce yourselves, starting with Daniel.
Thank you very much. I was just invited to join the panel, that's why I'm not on there. So I'm Daniel Nice. I'm based here in Hamburg. Since 2013 I started a project called Koina, which is the Greek word for common good, because we believe that money creation should be decentralized completely, so that every legal entity can create money. That's where I come from, that's what I'm working on, and I'm in the scene for quite some time and have a little background on it.
Thank you. My name is Florian Fiedler. I'm a CEO and co-founder of BlockBay. It's a blockchain-related startup. We will come later to this topic, I guess. And on the background, I have been in management consulting for banks especially. I founded or helped founding a bank, selling a bank, and also I've been dealing with a merger. And in the end, I was responsible for one bank for all their digital and digitalization activities, where I came across blockchain technology and thought, okay, this is something really, really new, really brilliant. So why don't you do something on your own with it? So this was why we founded BlockBay, and thanks for having me here.
No problem. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Ranjesh Tiwari. I'm a senior research fellow at the Hamburg University of Technology. And basically, like, my connection goes back to digitalization, to my master thesis when I was a student, and in 2004, 2005, was looking at mobile banking and how mobile banking can probably succeed or not succeed, what are the factors. So going back to that, that has been the connection, and now I basically engage into researching frugal innovations and frugality. And frugal innovations, we can say, since they are very much connected to ensuring affordable excellence, they very often make use of digitalization and digital technologies. And that is the connection, because we have been researching into financial inclusion and how frugal solutions can be used to create financial inclusion, especially in countries like India. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. So blockchain is in a very interesting state right now. There's some companies that are claiming to use it in production. There's a lot of companies experimenting with it, and there are a lot of companies just looking into whether they should use it or not. One of the things that isn't talked about too much is blockchain use specific to certain areas. So the first question I'll ask is to you, Dr. Rajneesh. From your understanding, what are the innovative use cases that you've seen so far where blockchain is being used for specific to India?
I think actually, like, the previous panel was talking about some very interesting use cases. So Suhas already talked about the state of Maharashtra, where it's being used for registration of cars, etc. What I also found very interesting and actually very useful for India is the case of a land registry. So where companies are using blockchain technologies to ensure that fraud is minimized in case of land registrations, because this is one of the major problems in India. There are no direct track records. People do not know whom this land ultimately actually belongs to, and if you cannot solve that problem, then you come into problems with the legal departments and leads to corruption, etc. So it's one of the major factors in India, and there have been cases for land registry which are being used with government support, for example, in the state of Andhra Pradesh. So I think that's a very interesting case. Then you have got small loans, insurance policies which are supported by blockchain technologies. And again, they have this connection to frugal solutions because they reduce the transaction cost, they reduce the total cost of ownership for companies which otherwise would be paying very high interest rates. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'll pass the question on to Daniel and Florian.
Yes, in a minute. 1 second. Dr. Tiwari, can you explain what frugal solutions are? Because I'm not sure if everybody knows this.
Yeah, sure. Frugal solutions, we define frugal solutions as affordable excellence. Thank you for pointing that out. So these are innovative products and solutions which reduce the cost of ownership in a significant manner, which simplify the processes, which reduce the over-engineered features, what is not required, so leading to resource efficiency and probably leading to disruption in industrial practices. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. So now I guess I have to answer your question.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up.
And sorry for interrupting.
No, that was a good thing. Please continue to do that.
So in Germany, I think blockchain technology is cross-border relevant. So it's not like in India it's like this, in Germany it's like that. It can change different industries, and within one industry it should be similar in different countries, I guess. So I think in financial services that's the first industry that understood the most the relevancy of blockchain, and so there are also already a lot of use cases. I don't want to name all of them, but one of them is my favorite one. It's KYC, because I don't know if you guys know what KYC stands for. It actually means pain in the ass. KYC, means know your customer, and it requires banks to ask their customers, if they want to open an account, for example, exactly where's the money coming from, what are you doing, blah, 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 please give me your data. The customers have to do this for each and every bank account, for each and every bank, and also insurance they want to open an account with. So as a customer, you do the same process everywhere again. It's really redundant. And for the bank, it's like, okay, I want to do business with this guy, but regulations say I have to ask him all these questions. With blockchain technology, there's a solution that you can do this process only once, then the information is stored in the blockchain and can be used by all participants. And I think this saves a lot of people a lot of pain, and reduces time and effort, and saves some money. But this is just one use case. There are loads of very, very nice use cases in financial services.
Thank you. Do you think that this use case can then make maybe other countries closer together? Because if, for example, in the European Union, people can travel much freely across other member states. Let's say a student wants to study abroad, he lives in Germany, goes to Austria. They would then need to do the KYC all over again. But maybe perhaps if there was some cooperation between German and Austrian governments, they don't need to do it because they can just use the same system and prove that they are who they are. What do you think about that?
It's actually a very good point. It is theoretically possible, definitely. But the regulations are in different countries a little different, of course. So they, as you point out, they have to work together. They agree on the same rules. If the BaFin, for example, agrees on exactly the same rules with the FINMA in Switzerland, then this might work. If there are some variations, then of course the BaFin will say, yeah, FINMA rules, they are just too easy. We have our own strict rules, and please do the process here again.
Thank you. And now I'll pass it on to Daniel.
So do you want to know the use cases that we already are working on, or that we could think of?
to focus on the use cases first, the ones that you think are specific to certain areas, like if there's a use case that's just specific to Germany, or maybe even just here in Hamburg, and then you can spread out from there.
Okay. Of course, I don't know all the use cases,
Yes.
but my favorite one would be the Finanzbehörde, so the financial tax authorities, to have the whole system run on a blockchain, so that everybody actually pays, even through a smart contract, into the tax blockchain, their taxes. I think that could be an interesting use case, avoiding all sorts of tax tricks and other problems that are related to that. So that could be a very interesting one. I personally doubt that most of the use cases that are worked on at the moment will deliver and fulfill the promise that might, people want out of that, or think it will deliver. We always say 95% blockchains don't make sense. So I think there will be an awakening that a lot of that stuff that we are, or that is basically in a trial and error mode, will finally lead to the conclusion that what we already have might work as well, better, cheaper. Other use cases, blockchains might fulfill their promise, but I think the future lies somewhere else, which is a true peer-to-peer protocol. Once the world is facing a true peer-to-peer protocol, without the flaws that blockchains have, for example, blockchain and governance, we will see a completely different world. And this is where it starts to get really interesting.
Okay.
So I think blockchains are just a step in between the next level. Yeah.
And that this peer-to-peer protocol that you're talking about is going to be a global standard, or are you thinking that there's going to be multiple small ones around the world that somehow just work together and have certain protocols that they can communicate with each other well, or is it a whole world thing?
No, it's too complicated, too expensive, and too less talent to get it done. So maybe there will be 2 or 3 out there, and one will become the standard, just like HTTP.
Okay.
Yeah, on which everything can be processed, everything.
Okay.
And then things start to get really interesting. For example, we were talking about the health insurance and having my own data, my own ledger on my own device. Yeah. If everybody would have that, and the true peer-to-peer protocol could actually give access to my data, and I give access to the doctor, then the whole system will change. A blockchain cannot do that, even not a public blockchain, nor a private blockchain. There's too many downsides and upsides to both of them. They will not fulfill that promise.
Sorry, with the transfer of patient
data, yes, well, you don't even transfer it anymore. In the true peer-to-peer protocol, you don't need to transfer the data. You just give access to your ledger. It's a completely different thing. So blockchains will not fulfill their promise, neither public ones nor private ones in the health sector.
Well, there are blockchain systems where you could just look into somebody's account and decrypt a certain
I
feature.
don't want my data in any blockchain.
Okay. That's fair too. So a lot of it with healthcare is dealing with a lot with regulations as well. And there are some regulations that are pushing down blockchain technologies or just cryptocurrency. But there are also some regulations that are pushing things forward, certain initiatives to give grants to research and things like this. I'll open this up. Do you know of any government-backed programs that promote the research on using blockchain technology or any decentralized systems? No?
I think there are quite a lot of governmental-induced programs. There is something happening in Switzerland, there's something happening in Austria. I don't know the names of the programs right now, but yes, there are. However, I do think we still have, especially in Germany, a huge gap between governmental institutions, regulators, and the corporations and the startups using this blockchain technologies or want to use the technologies. Because as a startup, you have a lot of questions, you have brilliant ideas, you know what this technology enables, you want to do it, and then you have the question, Anna, you said in the beginning, am I allowed to do this? Can I do this? Is this fine? Then you ask the regulators and they say, we don't know about this technology, please tell me, we cannot say if it's right or wrong. Even as we had in India, is Bitcoin allowed? Yes, no, they just don't know yet. So I think there is a quite big gap between the regulation and the execution, especially in Germany. Other countries, as pointed out, especially Switzerland, they are better on that right now because they agreed on first rules, for example, regarding ICOs. So what is possible there, or at least if you want to do an ICO in Switzerland, you know what you can do and what is not allowed to do. If you want to do in Germany, you will see a lot of question marks at the regulators and say, yeah, maybe you're allowed, maybe not. Let's see.
So your big point here is that there's a lot of gray area that we don't know if something is okay or something is not. I mean, with the government's reactions to different technology developments, not just blockchain, it can sometimes make or break the businesses in those countries. With blockchain growing at such a fast pace, do you think that governments would speed up the reactions more so than other developments like AI or machine learning? I'm not sure what the difference is between both of them, but yeah.
Yes, I think so. I think there will also be a competition between different countries. For example, if you have a startup in Germany, in southern Germany, and there is the Zug area in Switzerland, and they are all, you know it very well, they are all the blockchain startups and they know exactly what they are allowed to do and what not, then it's very easy to move there, and so the FINMA is actually attracting startups there. So I think there might be a competition, which leads in the end to speeding up of that. But regarding the main point, just one small addition, to make it very clear, I think regulation really is a good thing. It's not that, yeah, it's free money for everybody and we want to do money laundering with Bitcoin and whatever. It brings certainty. So if you found a business, you want to know what can you do and what is not allowed. So actually, if you have clear regulations, that's a USP for a country, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Before I pass it on to you, Daniel, I want to add an additional question as well, since he mentioned that you're familiar with the startup space. There's a lot more collaboration going on now in the blockchain space. In the past, I've seen projects that it was just maybe one or two developers, they start something, they start this coin called 42 coin, and the only thing nice about it is that it has 42 coins. What other development trends are there with regards to collaboration? I mean, we know already about regulators coming in and talking with regulators about it, but what other areas do you see from that startup space?
All the attempts that I have seen where talents or startups should eventually cooperate, more or less all failed, because everybody thinks that they have the Holy Grail in their hands and know what to do and know what not to do, and they're all wrong.
All of them?
Not all, but this thinking is wrong. Yeah.
Okay.
And so true collaboration is rarely seen. There's an interesting project in Austria that is basically driven by a blockchain Genossenschaft. It's called Genossenschaft. Is like an association. It's a special German legal entity.
Cooperative.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Where they actually really attracted a lot of talent to basically put the idea of a cooperative into the blockchain world. And they have a lot of cooperations going on that. That's a cool project it just started.
Okay.
In Switzerland, there's not no such cooperation. They all do their own thing and try their own business model or their own startup, and a lot of them are failing, even big ones, known ones.
Can you name some?
Yes, I could, but I don't.
Okay.
That is what I see, and that trial and error is going on, and they, then people start to reconnect after they failed.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you tell them, look, you should not do that because I know it's not going to work, they will never listen to you. They all need to do their own experience. Just like with a kid, that needs to put the hand on the heater.
I mean, it's commonly seen a lot in the startup world also, thank you, where people they think that they have, exactly as you said, the holy grail, even if the data says that maybe it might not work, they want to still give it a try.
Yeah.
But in a way, sometimes it's okay. They give more data for people in the future to hopefully look into. I know I have to say something though with Switzerland. So my company is based in Zug, and I'm actually moving there next year. I know that you're probably talking about also the Crypto Valley Association. It's not really a collaborative effort, it's more of like a group, but there are certain developments going on there with regards to people working together now.
It starts. Yeah.
It's starting, yeah. Okay.
After they've all failed individually, now they start to reconnect.
So you mean a lot of them who failed in the past and are now reconnecting and trying to figure out how to move on from there? Okay, that's good. So we've talked about a lot of the gray areas with the regulatory aspects and a lot of other aspects about adoption of blockchain. Now I'd like to ask each of you, how do you think blockchain is going to be adopted within the next 5 years? And if it differs from how you want it to be adopted, let me know as well how you want it to be adopted. We'll start this time with Dr. Rajneesh.
Okay, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
Especially knowing all those things, you do not even know how the technology is going to develop. So it's difficult to say how it is going to be adopted. But what I see and what I personally like is if I look at a country like India, I see a lot of effort coming from government agencies, from the central bank, are trying to push this technology with certain reservations. Like they are promoting it because they see it as a part of an inclusive society, a socially inclusive society. You are in a country where you have millions and millions of people who do not have access to infrastructure and to many services. So they see it as a disruptive solution to provide access to different services. So the government and the central government, they are going to push for it, they are going to support it with the modification or with the reservation that they are still trying to have intermediaries in it. Because they say there is a certain trust deficit, peer-to-peer solutions might not work, so they would still like banks and other intermediaries to be a part of it. And I would not put my bets right now on what solution would prevail at the end. I do not know what is the right solution either. So it's not just that I have a certain opinion, I'm not unsure how it should go around. I do not know it because I think certain people in certain sections also have a little bit of a fear of transparency or too much transparency. You spoke about the tax issues, etc. So especially in a country like India, if you suddenly have complete transparency and everyone knows what the other person is having or not having, it might lead to some other problems. So because of that, I remain excited. I look forward to see which way the wind blows. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. But does that also match up with how you, I know you said a little bit about it, how you want it to turn out with regards to just that level with the intermediaries, or would you prefer full decentralization in the future?
See, I'm a researcher.
Okay.
At the university, and I rather analyze. So I see it as an object which I analyze, and I'm not the subject. So
okay. Thank you. No problem.
So blockchain adoption in 5 years, you asked, right?
Yeah, if it's too long, we can lower it down to 3.
Okay.
Negotiations going on.
Yes. So I think we have to differentiate between different industries. there are industries, for example, like logistics. There's a blockchain-based startup in Switzerland. It's called Modum. They already use blockchain technology to make the process in pharmaceutical transporting a lot more efficient already using smart contracts. It's quite fine. Regulations actually help them to do this because there's a rule that helps them do their business model. So, but if we talk about financial services, or especially banking, I think it will take a lot more time. There's this famous research paper from Oliver Wyman and Santander Bank. They say there's a cost-saving potential annually, industry-wide for banks, for 15 to 20 billion US dollar each year. I don't think we get there in 3 to 5 years. I think it will take longer because if you want to completely change very sensitive processes in terms of clearing and settlement of corporate bonds or whatever, where it's really important that people don't lose their money and where it's really important to comply to all the rules, that takes longer time. But in the end, the impact will be great. It's just not coming overnight and not in 3 years, I think.
Would you like it to come in 3 years?
Yes, of course, because I think there are really huge advantages of this technology. It can really make the world better. So I think, yeah, I would love to beam myself into like, I don't know, 10 years or something where everything is working already. But on the other hand, I think it's good that we take our time, especially in banking, because it has to work. We cannot afford that we try something, try and error, and then, oh, this million didn't go to Dr. Tivari, it went to you.
Oh, what a pity.
It might be nice for you, but maybe it's not what we want. So, yeah, I think it's like this.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the banks are not probably going to change within the 3 years. Do you think maybe smaller startups might try to push them out? I mean, it's very unlikely that these huge banks would just suddenly topple down. But at least take a huge chunk out of their market. In the United States, for example, there's a lot of credit unions taking over, like in college campuses. A lot of college students prefer to go with them, especially when banks started to charge students $5 a month just to have a basic checking account. So how do you think that that's going to play out? There's a lot of ICOs right now for a lot of startups that are trying to do something similar. Yep, I'd like to hear your comments on that.
Yes, I think startups are actually challenging the banks, and this is good. It's good for the whole ecosystem. And when you speak of ICOs, initial coin offering, this is a new way of, I don't know if you're familiar with it, a new way of raising money using the technology for startup companies, but also for small and medium enterprises, which do not yet have the possibility to do an initial public offering or to have a corporate bond or something like this. So for them, the technology will help, or is already helping raising money. And I think there will be startups coming up who are advising corporations, for example, like Cycors or other companies, who are telling them how to raise this money using this new technology. And this then, of course, is a competition to the classic financial market, this startup, which is able to raise $100 million in 1 month using the blockchain technology worldwide. They could also go to a bank and go to the KYC process and do all these steps that are required to end up with 500,000 euro maybe. So the choice is clear for them, but then this technology and the startups using it, they are a competition to banks already, yes.
Oh, thank you very much. So before I pass the question on to you, because I asked another question again. So where do you see blockchain technology in 3 to 5 years? And if it's different from how you want it to be, how would you like it to be?
Can we make it 10?
Sure. Yeah, you're going for it.
Usually it takes 10 years to at least in the digital world, to spread globally, as researchers have found out, more or less.
But it's been going on for 7, right?
Yeah, but it's just now growing childhood stage, yeah. So and it's just started actually, more or less. So let's look at it in like 10 years.
Okay.
I think we will see 3 things: centralized systems, decentralized systems, and peer-to-peer systems. So they will all somehow fit in and solve different problems. We will also see what experts call multiple currencies for different use cases, solving different economic problems, because that's actually what currencies are for. And we have to deal with that. I would like to see real change, because it doesn't really matter to make the same mistakes but more efficient. If we now have the chance with new technology to really change something that is going really wrong in our world, and there's a lot of it, and most of it has to do with money creation, where it all starts, then we would be very stupid to miss that chance to really make the world a better place and not a more efficient place, because that will not help at all. So what I want to see is that, states and people and startups don't look at it from the perspective to try to make the most money out of it, because money eventually will not exist in the future.
That's a very powerful statement. Can you expand on why you think money...
Wait a second.
Okay.
So I would rather look for how to create value.
Okay.
How can I create value, or how can I promote to create value? How can I help to create value, or how can I help others or support others to create value? And this is then how you monetize. And that is okay, but if you try to make a bad process or a wrong process more efficient just to make even more money and extract more liquidity out of the system, then we really miss a big chance. And I hope that more and more startups will understand that. Otherwise, it will just continue as it is.
Okay.
But not for too long anymore. So now your question concerning the currencies. Well, if you look at our financial system, we basically all know that there's some flaws in our system, and nobody is fixing them, because they cannot be fixed for various reasons. So actually, the powerful institutions at the back of the system, which most of the people don't know, by the way, central banks have nothing to do with that, they actually have left the system. They moved their money into different directions, and they call it autopilot. The system is on autopilot. Those who ran the system in the past. So, and I'm connected to those people, that's why I know that. So they actually hope that somebody is solving that problem. This is why the institutions have met, those who really decide, and try to embrace that new development of multiple currencies, try to regulate, just like you said, try to get somehow into it, because they know that's the only way that they can have a certain influence on it. So once you understand that the old monetary system is coming mathematically and governance-wise to an end, then you would be very stupid to rely on it. But this is where all that blockchain and crypto stuff comes in to play. Once we really design a currency that solves that liquidity problem, then we might be lucky and we'll change something, really change something. If we continue to build tokens for certain utility, well, we call it utility tokens, yeah, for certain platforms, and limiting that currency by design, they will fail. Because if you limit the currency by design, you didn't understand what a currency is, because by design, in 1972, we stopped the gold standard for a very specific reason. And those who really think in these old gold standard terms, they have no clue about economics and currencies, and they will fail.
I have a follow-up question. Those are very interesting insights. And I like, yep.
We are going
Time?
running short of
Oh, we're
time.
sorry. Okay.
So, please.
Well,
We can do it offline.
okay. We can just continue things offline then. Thank you thank you everyone for listening. I'd like to thank Daniel, Florian, and Ranjit.
We would like to have some question session. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes, sure.
a short question session. We would like to have the panelists from the first panel. If you may join. Anyone, please.
Oh.
Please.
We have,
Open the question for the audience, yes?
okay.
Okay. Do you have any questions from the panel? Any questions from any of you? Okay, great. No one is having a question. Okay, so I would like to start the first question. Yes, Dr. Rajesh Tiwari. Yes, regarding the frugal innovation. I think there's a huge connection between blockchain and frugal innovation, which I think somehow we skipped. Is the frugal innovation, it may not be perfect, but it should be workable. That's the main ideology, if I'm not wrong, Tiwari. And the blockchain is now working in the same philosophy, that it is not perfect how it's working, but the startups, the ecosystem, they're trying to push forward to it. I totally agree to you, Daniel, on this aspect that no system is perfect, but system must be workable, right? And here I would like to actually bring your expertise on. You have seen how the financial transaction system, in terms of frugal innovation, developed in India. If you can give a brief background on that, how you think the new government actually implemented some policy that changed the financial system, and how you think after discussion with blockchain, that the government will be much more willing to take into consideration this kind of digital innovations.
That's a very, very complicated question actually, because it has a subset of 10 to 20 questions in that. But see, frugal innovation is, if you say like whether it's perfect or not, then it's a very relative question. If you say like perfection in terms of reaching 100% of the technologically possible performance, then it is not perfect and it does not have to be perfect. But if you mean by being perfect, meeting the need, meeting the unmet customer needs in a way which is good enough, which is exactly meeting those needs with as many resources as are actually required, then actually you are perfect, because you are now meeting those needs in a most efficient manner. And with that you can reach the goal of social inclusion, of financial inclusion, of reaching out to as many customers, as many users as possible, without affecting the environment in a very negative manner. Right now what happens is we develop solutions, especially in the developed world, which fulfill the requirements 300% times, 400% times. So we end up wasting resources for performances that are not required by the normal customer. So if we take that into account, and if we say what is being done in India right now, is it leading to financial inclusion? If you look at frugal solutions, yes, there are many different frugal solutions. If you look at if we pick up just one policy which was introduced by the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister accounts scheme, let's call it, so like it's complicated, Jan Dhan Yojana, so enabling people to have bank accounts. See, about 50% of India's economy and 85% of India's labor force works in the informal sector. So those people actually are not part of the formal solutions, they are the unbanked people. And what the Prime Minister did was, they said everyone is entitled to have a bank account. They can have a zero balance and they do not have to pay for it. That is a frugal solution, because now you provide access to people who do not have to pay for it. And with that, you can achieve many things. You can reduce corruption. You can have a direct transfer of funds, subsidies, whatever transfers. So you take out the middleman and the intermediaries, you take out from the system. So a very frugal solution in the processes, but which helps ultimately. Similarly, government has come up with different schemes in the financial sector. The Reserve Bank of India has been, for example, saying if a private sector bank wants to open a new branch in a city, then they also have to open a bank in a rural sector. So that way they have been trying to increase the number or the figures of like the banked people. That is one aspect of it. The second aspect where like the demonetization has taken place to increase the scope of the formal economy, again you can welcome it. But there may be, like, I would not say that they are always perfect solutions because they have been doing a lot of improvisation work. So they come up with a policy, they see whether it's working or not, and then they change it. So I do not know, like as Mr. Fiedler was saying, in the banking sector, actually you're not supposed to be doing so many experiments and learning on the job. So that may or may not be frugal in my opinion, but basically I think frugal innovation is required. It's required in India, it is required outside of India. Frugality we can implement even here, and we can have this collaboration between India and Germany to take such solutions outside to other economies which have similar socioeconomic conditions as in India. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions from the panel?
Hi, so I just have an open question and any of you can answer it. Unfortunately, the lawyer we had, I think she left, so I had a question around the regulatory issues around blockchain, and so we see a space where there's certain governments banning some of the key, banning ICOs from happening, and you also have certain governments which won't allow trading on exchanges and stuff like that happening around. But then you also have governments like Switzerland which have been quite pro blockchain regulations. So how do you, people who are experienced from corporates, consultancies, banks, startups, where you see a space where there can be like a unified regulation around the blockchain technology, which is quite future oriented, or what are the steps that you think need to be taken to reach that unified consensus around blockchain technology?
So let me just clear one thing, that what is being banned, maybe in China, in Korea, and some certain other places, it is not the technology. It is the Bitcoin itself, the digital currency that we talk about. So to understand that, or to assume that Bitcoin is blockchain, and blockchain is Bitcoin, that is a misnomer. Bitcoin is just one application of blockchain. So when we say China has blocked and Korea has blocked, due to obvious reasons, because a lot of money is getting transferred across the border without any control. As you know that China allows $250,000 to be, $500,000 per year to be repatriated by their own citizen abroad. Now, we all know that there is not much of transparency so far as China's economic situation is concerned, or for that matter even social situation is concerned. We do not have much of transparency. People are deliberately sending out the money outside. This is what government of China noted, and they try to block it. They have not blocked the blockchain. So when we are talking about the inclusion or certain regulations about the blockchain, see, the utility of blockchain it is definitely going to explode. In my opinion, it is not going to be a disruptive technology. This is going to be an enabling technology. So it is going to create solutions for some of the areas where other existing technology could not create those solutions. That is what is going to happen. It is not going to replace all the mainframes of the world, or Unix and Solaris of the world. That is never going to happen. It is going to enable our society with certain solutions which never existed earlier, which is going to definitely make it better. So in that sense, the regulations are coming, and the regulation would not come in form of technology, rather it will come in the form of the social solutions. Say, Dr. Tiwari just now explained about the Jan Dhan Yojana, where people can open the bank account with a zero balance. That is a social solution. Which technology does it ride on, that is completely different. It can be blockchain, it can be any other traditional solution also. So, enabling the blockchain, there is no restriction so far as technology is concerned, and therefore there is no need for regulation so far as blockchain should be utilized, maybe in the land record or not, in the banking or not, in the airlines or not, there is no such restriction. There should not be any such restriction. Since I'm not a legal person, I cannot elaborate further onto it, but this is what my understanding is.
I think that just to add to that, a lot of the regulatory questions come around the financial applications of blockchain. And like if you look at a lot of the issues around the ICO space, okay, if you have basically 100 million, 50 million, 100 million, 250 million dollars of capital that's being raised in a relatively unregulated manner, there's a lot of issues around that. And the one, okay, governments don't like that, but I think there's going to be increased regulations around that. And I think part of it is also because there's good reason that there should be some regulations around that. Like you can easily get into money laundering situations. You also are going to need to have some sort of consumer protections and investor protections. And I think as the faster that the kind of the community and the ecosystem grows up and professionalizes a lot of those activities, I think the less stringent regulations, the less kind of reactionary regulations will be. But I think there's always going to be reactionary regulations and there's going to be reactionary pushes, kind of trying to limit things, but eventually things will kind of come to some sort of equilibrium in the long run. Like I think it's a comparison that's not one-to-one is if you say, okay, look at peer-to-peer file sharing, like in the early 2000s with like basically music piracy. Like I don't think cryptocurrencies are not equivalent to music piracy, but you had this thing where you had this established industry, this new way of engaging and new way of interacting that they tried to kind of just say, okay, no, this is stop, this is illegal, stop it completely, and that doesn't work because you can't stop it. Like unless you completely block the internet or block blockchain at a network level, you can't really stop what you're talking about here. So I think there's going to have to become to terms with regulations that will be slightly different in different jurisdictions, but overall something that kind of works at a global level.
Okay, I would like to. Thanks for joining this panel and wonderful discussion. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to OAV for organizing this great event and to Deutsche Bank for giving us this place. And thanks for having you all here, and please join the networking session which will start now. Thank you. Have a nice evening.